Welcome to the George Benson Football Podcast, episode number 1. I said on Instagram there wasn't going to be any video in the podcast for now until I get everything sorted. As you can see, I'm only joined behind me by the camera and telephone for when people bring me parcels, which is very rarely, and when people come to visit me, which again is also kind of rare as well. That's not kind of true, but people don't visit me as much because I live in London now, and most of my friends don't live in London. Some of them do, most of them don't. But yeah, there's not really anything behind me. That was the main reason why I wasn't going to video the first couple of podcasts while I set everything up. The sound isn't perfect because we're in a big room. There's a lot of echo, reverb in this room. I'm going to try and fix that. I'm going to try and come up with something that is going to work so that the quality of these podcasts can increase as the quantity of the podcast also increases. But welcome. This is a new thing, but not really a new thing for me. I've had a radio show before, which was focused on football. It was a 1 hour to 2 hour show, and we filled it with a little bit of music, but the majority of the time, myself and my co-host Chris would be going on tangents, rants. He was a Manchester City fan, of course. I'm a Chelsea fan. We would go on for 20 to 30 minutes at a time on a single topic when it came to football. So sitting in front of a microphone is not something that's new for me. I'm used to this. Sitting in front of a camera is also something that isn't new to me. I'm used to that also, as I've made over 1,800 or nearly 2,000 YouTube videos in my time. So I'm not scared about this. Only thing I do want is I do want to strive for perfection. I do want this whole production to increase over time. I want it to sound perfect. I want it to look great. I want to get multiple camera angles in there. I want to get guests on here. And I want this podcast to be a place where I can uncensor myself. I can talk about whatever the hell I want. Obviously, as you've seen from the title, the George Benson Football Podcast is what we're going to go with for now. And the reason I pick football for the topic of my podcast is I genuinely feel like I could have a conversation with a brick wall about football. I could talk to it and get somewhere with it. I think the brick wall would learn something about football from me. I'm not saying I'm a football genius. I'm certainly not a statistician who knows every single statistic there is to know. And I am a very highly opinionated football fan. I'm a massive Chelsea fan, but I don't want that to be a bias that constantly gets brought up in these podcasts and in this video and in this whatever it is that you're listening or watching this on. I'm very excited about it. I want to get football fans in from all over the world. I want to interview football fans from obscure football teams all over the world. I want to bring in football fans from different clubs in the Premier League, from football fans from different clubs in the non-league, in the Football League. I want this to be a rounded place where discussions can be had, opinions can be made, and of course, the most important thing is, of course, the audience. And I want to know your thoughts on anything I say, or not necessarily just on things I say, maybe things you want to hear about. Let me know in the comments of whatever platform it is you are seeing or hearing this podcast on. Now we've got that out of the way. It's only me, so it's just going to be me spreading my thoughts, particularly about the Manchester City versus Liverpool game. Now, at the time of recording this, it was last night. I cannot remember a time where I've been so transfixed by a match that wasn't Chelsea. When Chelsea are playing on the TV or when I'm at a Chelsea game, the only times I'm really on my phone is when I want to shout about something on Twitter, because I like to be active on Twitter when Chelsea are playing, or if I'm doing a little Instagram story or a piece for my matchday vlog, whatever it may be. Other than that, I'm focused in on what's going on in front of me. When I've got football on my TV, a lot of the time I'm distracted. I'm scrolling through Instagram. I'm messaging friends, messaging family, doing something else in the background. The football's always on and I'm concentrating on it, but I'm not just like zoned in with my eyes and everything else. That game last night, City-Liverpool, 2-1 City, a big game in the title race, a huge match, but not just that. The quality of football was absolutely outstanding. If there was an advert for the Premier League, that match was it. I would show that match to anyone who wants to understand why we love football. Now, of course, I'm a Chelsea fan, and it does pain me to say that, in my opinion, Manchester City and Liverpool are leagues above anyone else in the Premier League. Now, that isn't just because I'm a slightly anti-Spurs. I'm not anti-Spurs. In fact, even though they're our biggest rivals as a Chelsea fan, I love Pochettino. I think he's brilliant, and I really like a lot of the Spurs players. However, Liverpool and Manchester City are playing at an intensity and at a level which is higher. And I don't think Spurs can keep up the consistency that we're probably going to see from Liverpool and City between now and the end of the season. Last night, it could have gone either way. There are some decisions, okay, maybe Kompany could have been sent off for that tackle on Mohamed Salah, and then I think you can see him calling Salah a pussy afterwards, which is just, petty business, really. It's a big game. Tempers are going to be higher. There's going to be adrenaline going through all of these players on the pitch, and these things get said and these things happen. So potentially Kompany could have been sent off. And then again, 11 millimetres. John Stones hitting the ball against Ederson, then clearing it off the line. That was pretty impressive. I think he just wanted the limelight, to be honest. But no, I'm joking. It was brilliant from him. And again, another England player who gives England a very bright future, John Stones. He struggled at first under Pep, but now he is one of the first names on the sheet, really. Well, maybe not. I mean, there's David Silva, Bernardo Silva, Laporta. Yeah, he's not the first name on the sheet at all. But what a brilliant performance from him yesterday. Yes, he gave the ball away once or twice, but Manchester City were absolutely brilliant yesterday. Fernandinho, the engine in the middle of the park for Manchester City. He's 33 years old. He's the oldest player in their team. He was the best player by a country mile last night, second only really to Bernardo Silva, who ran 13.7 kilometres, I think it was. And he has the stat now for the top 2 distance covered in a game stat for this season, which is incredible. Yesterday against Liverpool and then beforehand against Spurs. He was fantastic yesterday, as was his celebration when he scored for the Have a Nice from Vuj, which was brilliant as well. But City were great. I did say before the start of the season that Liverpool would win the league this year. I had a funny feeling because it's very difficult to retain Premier League titles, as we have seen, particularly in recent years with Chelsea, where they'll win a league. We won it under Mourinho. The season after that was a disaster. Won it under Conte, and then were nowhere near that level last season when it came to trying to retain that title. With City, it is a different story because they could field 2 different 11s that would probably still make it into the top 4. So they've got that strength in depth. But the one thing that always happens when you're the champions, particularly with the way that City won the league last year, they won the league by a country mile, over 100 points, which we've not seen before in the Premier League. It was extraordinary. This season, they are the team that everybody wants to beat. Whether teams can do it or not, there are some teams that aren't capable of beating Manchester City just because of the quality that is running through that team, that there are some teams in the league that can't match that other than on a freak day. But, teams like Leicester, they've beaten them. Crystal Palace, with the help of an absolute wonder goal by Andros Townsend, Palace won at the Etihad. It is possible, but it's because teams are really going for it this season. And that's why I felt like at the start of the season I was going to pick Liverpool, because City are obviously the one that everyone wants to beat. But at the same time, Liverpool, they've had a few years now under Klopp. They're getting better and better and better. We saw them get to a Champions League final last season, which by all means is no easy feat. And if it wasn't for Karius, we could have been seeing potentially another Liverpool Champions League victory. Now, I'm not going to say they deserve to win if it wasn't for those mistakes. I don't think they do. I think Real Madrid were the better team and they deserve to win. However, the way that they were progressing, the signing of Keita, okay, he's maybe not had the impact that people would have expected, but he has had an impact nonetheless, as has Fabinho. They have got strength in depth. I think maybe they do need another attacking player when things aren't going right between Mane, Firmino and Salah. They've got Shaqiri now as well, which is one of the bargains of the summer for 12 million from Stoke. That was a wonderful signing. He's a great player, strong. He's got legs like an ox. And obviously a wonderful wizard with a left foot as well. So I had a feeling Liverpool were going to do it this season. And I think that despite losing that game last night to City, I still have them down as favourites. They've got a 4-point lead. Yes, that is not as pretty as a 10-point lead. I think if they would have won last night, it would be done. I don't think they would have dropped enough points. Even if City would have won every game between now and the end of the season, with a 10-point deficit to Liverpool, I don't think it would have been enough. But I still think 4 points is going to be enough for them. I think there may be 1 or 2 more twists in the tail, which means that Liverpool will drop below Manchester City for the time. But I can see a couple more slip-ups like the ones we saw from City over the Christmas period happening between now and the end of the season. The bad news is that even though they've got a ridiculously talented squad with multiple different players in all positions that can play, injuries mean they're probably going to spend more money, which means they're going to be even stronger in depth. And will Liverpool spend the same sort of money as City can in the transfer window this January? Probably not. I don't expect City to spend a fortune, but I expect them to strengthen in numbers for some more backup positions, which if they're going to be fighting in the Champions League, which I strongly expect they will be, they're going to need that. And, we're looking at two teams here, Liverpool and City. Two teams who, if they can avoid one another in the Champions League, we might not just be looking at a Premier League title race between the two of them. We could easily be looking at two teams playing each other in the Champions League final. Two English teams that are currently playing at the top of their games. There isn't really any teams close to them in the Premier League, in my opinion. Spurs, okay, they've had a wonderful season. When they're going forward with Son, Ali, Eriksen, Kane, they look like a formidable team, and they destroyed Chelsea at Wembley a couple of weeks ago. I am dreading those League Cup games, by the way. We'll get onto that maybe in a little bit. But I don't think Spurs have the same intensity in every match as Liverpool and City potentially can play to. That game we saw last night was different gravy. It was different level. And I think that when it really comes down to it, I think we can see Spurs losing more games the same way they did against Wolves. And I don't see that happening as much from Liverpool and Manchester City. Now, I stick with my prediction that I made at the start of the season. I still think Liverpool are going to do it. As I've said, I think to clear that one up, I think that Lovren is still a bit of a liability. He's the self-proclaimed best centre-back in the world, which still makes me laugh to this day. I think he was still one of the top trending names on Twitter last night, simply because whenever he makes a mistake, everyone, of course, we just bring up the statements that he makes about himself. He loves himself as a footballer. And, if you're a professional footballer, a bit of arrogance doesn't hurt anyone. In fact, it can actually make you a better player, but you've got to keep, sticking with what you say and not consistently making the same big mistakes. Now, it was a big mistake in the sense that if you're playing against Manchester City and you're defending against one of the best strikers in the world, Sergio Aguero, you need to be aware that you've got to beat him to the ball. You've got to know that if he's not in front of your eye line, he's probably going to be sneaking in behind you. Exactly what he did yesterday. Sneaks in behind Lovren, gets a wonderful first touch in, and then somehow, with his weak foot, sticks it in the top corner to Alisson's near post. Now, you can't argue with the finish. There's no way, in my opinion, anyone can blame Alisson for that. If you actually look at the angle that it hits, that it actually goes past him, there's only really one place in the net that Aguero could have put that ball, and he did it. And that's how you win huge football matches. Then Sane, brilliant finish off the post. It kind of reminded me a little bit of the goal that Hazard scored against Liverpool in the 1-1 draw at Stamford Bridge, where he just took it on his left, sweeps it past Alisson, gets it down low and hard. It was a perfect finish, and deservedly so. Manchester City win the game, and they open the title race back up. Now, obviously I sit here as a Chelsea fan. I don't want my podcast to be too Chelsea dominant. However, as they are, of course, the team that I spend the most time watching, they're the team I care about the most, of course. There's a chance that some of the podcasts they'll have segments that are longer when I talk about Chelsea than other teams, for example. I think it's safe to say that most people want to know about my thoughts about a Chelsea defeat than they do if Huddersfield get beat by Burnley, for example. No offence if you're a Huddersfield or Burnley fan. I don't want anyone to feel like their team isn't important, but for me, that's something I'm more inclined to speak about. And until I get more guests on the podcast and stuff where I can bounce off other people, I want to talk about Chelsea. And it is very, very frustrating the way things are going under Sarri at the moment. It's all well and good that we're playing this Sarri ball football. And quite frankly, I don't really know what Sarri ball is. People talk about it as if it's something that, oh yeah, Sarri ball, it's been around, whatever, like Napoli, brilliant. Napoli are a different team to this Chelsea team. We're not seeing the same intensity from Chelsea that we saw from Sarri at Napoli. And that is down to the players that are currently playing in the system. It's not a system that these players are used to. Of course, it's new, we need to wait, we need to give it time, whatever. It's a system that these players, I don't personally think are good enough for. I don't think that Yes, Jorginho started the season brilliantly. He is a brilliant regista, and it's something that, Sarri wants to use. He wants to play Jorginho in front of the defenders in Kante's best position, and he probably is the best central defensive midfielder in the world. That frustrates me, that we're playing Kante out of position to accommodate Jorginho. And this isn't me bashing Jorginho per se, but I do feel as though it's such a waste with N'Golo Kante playing further forward when he is the best central defensive midfielder in the world. We've seen that for the past few years. And I think that the lack of understanding of Sarri's plan and Sarri's system that he's trying to implement at Chelsea is the main reason why we are so far off the pace. And 10 points, okay, it's not impossible for Chelsea to make up those points and really challenge for the title. We're not going to win the league. I'm 100% sure of that. We're not winning the Premier League this season. But I don't even think it's the points that we need to be looking at. It's the performances. It's the level of intensity that Chelsea are playing at, which is so far away from Liverpool and Manchester City. So far away. That's why we're not going to challenge. The wins at Watford and Crystal Palace, we were very lucky in those games. Very, very lucky in those games. Okay, we've defended very well recently. Clean sheet against Palace. Clean sheet against Southampton. We've got a striker in Alvaro Morata who sadly looks as though he doesn't want to play. I think he would rather be sat at home with his wife. I really do. That's what it's looked like for so long now. And I want him to succeed. I don't want to be one of those people that is Morata out. We need to sell him. We need to get rid of him and get in a new striker. I say that we give him some more time. However, we do need another striker. We can't afford to lose games without scoring at home to Leicester. We certainly can't afford to draw at home to Southampton and dominate the possession the way we did. Possession doesn't matter unless you win football games. And you look at Manchester United right now. 4 wins under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Looking very, very good indeed. They're playing nice football, but they're scoring goals because they have got different players, not just Eden Hazard, that are able to create and stick that needle in the defence to score. That is where Chelsea is struggling, and we need to sign a striker. And I'm conscious that I said I didn't want this podcast to be Chelsea bias, but I have just gone ahead and ranted about Chelsea for 3 minutes. Sip my coffee. I need a coffee sometimes when I talk about Chelsea because I'm passionate about it. That's just the way it is. But Manchester United, what are we talking about now? They were the laughingstock under Jose Mourinho, and I did not expect United to go ahead and sack him. I really didn't think it was going to happen. I didn't think they were that sort of club. And that isn't me bashing United saying, oh, I think you did the wrong thing. They certainly did the right thing. Look at what has happened. Solskjaer comes in. Pogba finally looks like the world-class player we saw at the World Cup. The player that won it for France. He was one of the best players in that World Cup team. And, letting him off the leash, as a lot of people have been saying, cliche, but it is literally like you've let him off the leash, and he is now running riot, scoring goals for United. Martial is looking good. Rashford is looking like a reborn player as well. We'd almost forgotten that he'd broken into the scene. And obviously it was Mourinho that gave Rashford the chance. But I think now that United are playing more attacking football, traditional Manchester United football, we're seeing the best out of them. And they are going to be challenging now for the top 4. They're going to win games against the teams lower in the table. The real challenge will come when they play against the rest of the teams in the top 6. But they are going to blow teams away with the way they're playing attacking football right now. And as a Chelsea fan, I'm worried that United are going to finish in the top 4. And I'm going to try and get some people in for the podcast who support Man United, support Arsenal. I want to speak to people about their thoughts on the challenge for the top 4 because there are 6 teams now in the Premier League. Since Leicester have won the league, that was the wake-up call for the so-called big clubs in the Premier League that, football is moving at a pace now that is, with all the money involved from TV and transfers and player wages and all of this stuff, you can't sit back and wait anymore. You need to keep that pressure by signing players that are going to keep you looking for those Champions League places. The Europa League now, it is a hindrance for most teams. And of course, I want Chelsea to win it this year, mainly for the trophy, but to get back in that Champions League. And when it's so competitive, there isn't a guarantee that Chelsea are going to finish in the top 4. And I think United are going to come up. I think Arsenal, okay, there's been a few iffy results recently. The defeat against Liverpool was kind of embarrassing. Aubameyang touched the ball 13 times, and 6 of those would have kicked the ball to kick off again. That's crazy. Arsenal are back in it. I think that the way United are playing now, I think the momentum is definitely with them. I think they are more of a challenge for the top 4 maybe than Arsenal are at this point. But it is going to be close. And the days of seeing teams like Leicester win the Premier League are done. The big boys are going to be dominant again. I think that was the wake-up call they needed. And, money has been spent by Manchester City. You could say that Chelsea winning the league under Conte was the worst thing that could have happened in terms of Manchester City having that spending power again. It was Guardiola knew that he couldn't go another season without winning the trophy, which they did last season. And they spent hundreds of millions on fullbacks alone, let alone any other positions that they've strengthened with, Bernardo Silva in recent years, Riyad Mahrez, Ederson in goal. They spent a lot of money, and City and Liverpool are, like I've said, that level above. And it's up to the rest now. Spurs, Arsenal, Chelsea, United to fight for those top 4 positions. And I really hope I'm not sat here in weeks to come even more upset about Chelsea. It's not, we're into the last 32 of the Europa League. We're into the last 4 of the Carabao Cup. We've got an FA Cup game against Forest to come this weekend, which we've got to try and retain that trophy. And we're still in the top 4. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to be all negative about Chelsea. It's not going badly at all. Defensively, we look good again. I'm happy with Kepa. But I definitely am wary, particularly of Manchester United. And of course, Arsenal. It's not as bad now as it was under Arsene Wenger, which is kind of sad if you are like me and someone who tuned into Arsenal Fan TV just to see the rage when Arsenal hadn't won. That isn't as frequent these days as it was in the couple of seasons before this one. But that's pretty much it from me right now. It is awesome to just sit down and chat football for 25 odd minutes that I've done today. Of course, there's going to be far longer podcasts when I can have people to bounce off of, when there's more ways to have different conversations about this. And I'd love to know your thoughts on what I've said in this podcast today in the comments of whatever platform you're watching this on. Probably most of you on YouTube, and I'm going to try and get these out to all of the other streaming platforms as well. So that you can listen to it on the go, or you can watch it, or you can download it, whatever it is that you want to do. Obviously, the main thing is the conversation. And I think today has been a lot of fun. I'm very excited for the rest of the season. I think there is definitely a title race on. I'm sticking with my prediction. I'm sticking with Liverpool. And you can expect a few stories to come in upcoming podcasts. It's called the George Benson Football Podcast for a reason. We're going to talk about football. We're going to discuss football. I love football. You can probably tell from the amount I go on about it all of the time. But yes, this is it. I'm going to wrap it up now. Thank you for watching. This is the first of hopefully many of this style of content from me. I'm very excited for the future. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you all very soon. I have no idea how I'm going to sign these out, so expect everything to change over time. See you in a bit. Bye-bye.